You're listening to the Heart Lessons podcast with me, Sarah Rieke. Real women, real stories, real faith. Hi friends, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Heart Lessons podcast. I'm so glad you're joining me today. If you are in the southeastern U.S. like I am, I hope you fared okay in the wake of Hurricane Matthew. I know that we fared pretty well. Actually, the worst thing I can report is that our internet has been out for a little while, and so that's why this podcast is coming out today instead of on Monday mornings when I usually like to post. But I feel like, that's pretty minor. So I really can't complain, and I hope you all are safe and fared well as well. I just wanted to say, when I started out with this podcast, I guess I really wasn't sure what to expect. I felt like it was something the Lord was leading me to, but I didn't really know anything past just, trying to step out in faith and be obedient. And I did know that I believe in the power of stories and testimonies. And, when we speak out loud what the Lord has been doing for us, it's just really, really powerful. And so what I didn't expect was just how much of a privilege it would feel like to actually be able to share these stories, these women's stories. And, I always say I like to find women walking well in what God has for them. And, that can be anything from, last episode was Mary Hairston, and she's using her amazing artistic abilities for God's glory. Or women like my friend Pam and my friend Jordan and my friend Holly, who have walked some really difficult roads and are still giving God glory. Like, what a privilege to share these women's stories. And that's just something I didn't anticipate, just like how humbling it would feel to be sort of the platform on which these women could stand and proclaim God's truth. And I've just really enjoyed it. And today is no different. I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today. Her name is Katie Moormann, and she lives locally. She actually came over to my house to record and was introduced to me through a mutual friend who said, you have got to hear, her testimony and what the Lord, walks her through every single day with her special needs child. And once I started to talk to Katie, well, actually, not even once I started to talk to her, I visited her blog and just started reading, and I thought, oh my word, I need to talk to her. People need to hear what she has to say. And so I am so thrilled that she said yes, and that you're going to hear from her today. And she does have a daughter with special needs, and that's what we chat about. She talks about what it's like to have a 7-year-old who is high maintenance, as we called it. She exhibits symptoms of autism as well as cerebral palsy, but she actually doesn't have an official diagnosis for either, on either side. And so she is just this mix, and it just creates a lot of challenges for Katie as a mother. And so we talk about how she deals with her anger over some situations, how she deals with when she feels impatient. She talks a little bit about self-care and about preserving her relationships with her other children and with her husband. She also shares some really practical ways that we as strangers can gracefully interact with her and her daughter in public, and, kind of gives us words that we can say to educate our own children and to make ourselves just extend grace, help us extend grace, to someone with a special needs child. So I'm just really excited for you to hear what Katie has to say today. And before we jump into my conversation with her, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who's left a rating and a review. I actually checked and I have 18, which is pretty awesome. But I was wondering if maybe this week we could bump it up to 20. If maybe there were 2 of you regular listeners who would say, sure, I'll take the 60 seconds and, put a little rating and review. And that would just mean the world to me. It would be really great. I don't exactly know how it works, but basically the more ratings and reviews you have, the more iTunes makes your podcast searchable to other people. So the more ratings and reviews allow other people to find the show more easily. And so I would just really appreciate that. And so that way a lot of other people can hear these wonderful stories and be blessed by them. So that is all from me, and here is my conversation with Katie. I know you're going to love it. All right. Well, thank you, friends, for tuning in to the Heart Lessons podcast today. As you know, I like to find women who are walking well in what God has for them. And today my guest is Katie Moormann. Hi, Katie.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming over to my house. And Katie's here today to talk about special needs parenting, which I'm really excited to hear your perspective, and I think we can all learn a lot from what you have to say. But before we jump into that, will you just tell me a little bit about your family and maybe a little bit of snapshot of who you are and what you like to do and all those lovely things?
Sure. I'm married for 11 years to a man named Rieke, and he has a 21-year-old son from his previous marriage. And then together we have 3 children who are, I have an almost 9-year-old James, and then a 7-year-old June, and a 4-year-old who is named Charlotte. And my 7-year-old has, her working diagnosis is autism, cerebral palsy, and she also has an intellectual disability. The doctors believe she has a genetic disorder that we just haven't found yet.
Okay.
So that's sort of what we're working with. Let's see a little bit about me. I love to do crafting, but that hasn't really happened much.
Did you used to teach?
Yes, I used to teach. I taught first grade for the bulk of my teaching career, and I really did love teaching. And I'm currently not doing any of that right now. I'm raising my children, so
yeah.
And I really like my favorite thing to do probably is just hang out with friends and have coffee and wine, maybe.
That's fun. Okay, so your daughter June has special needs, and she's 7, like you said.
Yeah.
So let's say 7 years and 9 months ago, what did life look like for you? And then tell me about the day that it all changed.
Yeah. So June, she was my second child that I gave birth to, and she had a wonderful pregnancy, a perfect birth. I birthed her at 39 weeks. Easy birth. And I sort of was just looking, for the signs of I had a first child who was very typical, developed typically. And so she came out, and it's interesting when she first arrived, I didn't have that same connection that I did with my first child. And I think part of it was that she did not look into my eyes. And so you probably don't even remember as a mom, but as a mom, when you first have a baby, you can kind of just start looking into their eyes. From birth, they start gazing into your eyes. And I just remember that June didn't have that eye gaze. And she was also a very good baby, and she slept all the time, and she barely cried. And she really didn't care if I fed her or not. And so I just kind of started to see those little signs, and about 2 weeks into it, my husband said, I think we have a special little girl on our hands. And at 2 weeks, you just don't know what you're dealing with. There were no physical abnormalities, nothing that we could pinpoint. And at the 3-month checkup, the doctor, we voiced our concerns, like, lack of eye contact, and just not meeting milestones, turning over. She actually was failure to thrive for a couple months, which simply meant that she wasn't gaining weight quickly enough. So we just kept trying to feed her, force feed her, anything we could do to beef her up. And she we kind of got referred to early intervention, and so we started with them early on, about 6 months.
Okay.
At 6 months, she also got glasses. And so we thought, oh, maybe her lack of eye contact has something to do with not being able to see well. She can really see just fine. She just needed some glasses. So that's sort of where our journey started, and she just kind of had this hanging diagnosis of being globally developmentally delayed for a very long time, until we demanded a diagnosis just so that we could start getting services around 18 months. So that's sort of a little snapshot of what happened in the very beginning.
Yeah. Was it hard to get that diagnosis? Because you said you had to fight for it, or you demanded it. So what was that like?
No, it wasn't hard at all,
Okay.
actually. Basically, we went into our neurologist who we had been seeing, and we said, we want to apply for a Medicaid waiver, which simply means we needed help at our home with our child. I was pregnant with my third, and we just needed some help.
Yeah.
And so we just went in and we asked for it because we knew we needed to apply for this waiver. And he just basically decided right then on a diagnosis.
Okay.
And he knew that something was wrong. So this again is, an umbrella diagnosis because we don't really know what's wrong. She doesn't have brain damage that they can see. It's not visible. So even cerebral palsy is just a symptomatic diagnosis.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, she's exhibiting like the symptoms
Yeah.
of someone with cerebral palsy, but
Yeah.
not everything in its entirety.
Right. Cerebral palsy, people with cerebral palsy, usually there's an identifiable reason why they might have brain damage, like oxygen deprivation or trauma at birth, before birth. It's an environmental cause. But unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, we had a doctor look through her entire birth record, the long beeping thing that happens when you give birth.
Yeah.
They looked through that and they said, she had no oxygen deprivation, no reason that she should have cerebral palsy that we can see. So that's sort of where we're at. We're kind of just waiting for a genetic diagnosis. And, at first it didn't really matter to have a genetic diagnosis because we were going to treat her the same way. She was going to have the same therapy. But now to have a diagnosis where we could say, that this chromosome translocated would be nice just so that we could connect to somebody in the world who had the same diagnosis.
You could Google it and contact somebody.
And just have a community of people
Right.
to shoot things by and just know her prognosis for the future. Because she's just sort of a mystery. I haven't met anyone like her, so...
And you don't quite feel like at home in the cerebral palsy community, maybe not quite in the autism community. Like you're kind of not fitting.
That's a good way to say that. I kind of am just raising a daughter with special needs and not. I really don't. Even though I'm part of the Cerebral Palsy Foundation, and I get emails from the autistic community. I really don't. I connect with parts of both, but you're right. It's hard to really connect with either. So, yeah.
Having a label would be a little bit more definitive and
it would
you some
even
helpful. Closure, kind of maybe.
It would have closure. So, we've done every genetic test that insurance will pay for. So there is one test that we can do. That we would have to save up for. It's about $5,000. So that one is the one that we would have the most chance of seeing something. There would be a 30% chance of diagnosis.
Wow.
So,
but again, the finances, that's like
something to say.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You don't just have $5,000 lying around. Come on. Right. So you had said, you mentioned to me that it took 2 years for you to fully love June. Tell me about that journey and what that was like.
So with my son, I felt like from birth, again, there was somebody responding to what I was doing with
The
him.
lights were on in the attic, so to speak.
Yeah, and he was, if I would smile, he'd smile back. He was trying to babble, trying to talk, trying to communicate with me, pointing at things. And there was a reciprocal relationship going on. And with my daughter, it just took a while for us to connect. And I mean, even now, we're still in step one where we're trying to just get the eye gaze down, where she's looking at me, or she's leading me to something. And yeah, it's almost embarrassing to say, but to actually fully love my daughter was difficult from the beginning. And there was a lot about her life that I didn't like in the beginning.
Yeah.
I was taking her to hundreds of appointments, and we were trying to figure out what was wrong, and she just sucked the life out of me. I mean, I just had my whole life revolved around her and what I had to do with her and how much therapy I had to give her, and therapists would be in our house and telling us what to do, and I would have to, I'm a rule follower, and so I want to follow the routine of what I was supposed to do with her. So there was a lot that I was resentful for. My husband, on the other hand, he could easily love her from birth, and easily connected with her from birth. I was just going back and I have videos of him just at 3 months, just interacting, and it's like he knew instinctively what he had to do to get an interaction out of her. And it was really just something as simple as making really silly noises, and she thought that was hysterical, and she would giggle. And so I think that's the one thing I had to learn with her, is I have to get on her page, not try to pull her up to mine.
Yeah.
And try to figure out what's interesting to her, instead of it being all about me and what I think she should be interested in at the age of 7. So.
Or what even another 7-year-old might be interested in, might not interest her.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So what helped you sort of reach a point of like connection and love? Like at what point were you like, I'm feeling it now?
Yeah. So that is something that I had to force myself to do.
Okay.
Really force myself to do. And that is when I learned to put my own agenda aside and really just do what she wanted to do. And I had to actually transform my whole life and say no to things that I would normally say yes to. I think I had a pretty busy social calendar, and I had to really dedicate my weeks to organizing my life during the week so that on the weekends I could be available for my daughter. And so on a Saturday, know that I am going to spend a big chunk of my Saturday on the floor with my 7-year-old daughter doing sensory activities so that we can have a sort of connection.
Okay.
And it's those moments where she will respond because, you're on the floor with her looking at, listening to a funny sound over and over again, or I am putting my hands into this messy applesauce thing that we've made together. And do I want to be doing that on a Saturday? No, I frankly want to just be sitting drinking my coffee with my husband at the park while our kids run around and we have, some time to chat. No, but I've kind of had to make the choices of, like, on a Saturday, that's not my chore day. It's not my catch-up day. I have to do all that during the week so that I can be available to her. And so I think that slowly, we've developed that connection, and it's been a lot slower for us than with my husband because for some reason my husband can just stop and just put everything down and really focus on her, even if it's just they're doing nothing except changing noises back and forth. And I have a hard time stopping and putting all that aside. And so I've really had to just learn how to do that and learn how selfish I really am as a person, as a human being.
I feel like that just even with my typically developing kids, though, I feel like I struggle with that too. Like,
Yes.
stopping
Yes.
the dishes, stopping, whatever I'm doing that I feel like is so important, and saying, like, no, right now I have to play Legos. Like, he's going to be off at school in 20 minutes. Like, just sit and play Legos, for 20 minutes.
Yeah, and it so helps the day go better when you
I
for
agree.
20 minutes get on the floor with your child and connect. For some reason, they learn how to creatively play better if you model it with them for 20 minutes. Now with June, it's a different story because I have to do that the whole time. Someone has to be with her the entire time she is awake, and just watching her for safety reasons. But yeah, it's still a sacrifice. So yeah, just the example of, I don't know about you, but sometimes I get angry with my children if I'm, interrupted or that kind of thing. So I've had to really learn to separate the two. Like, am I angry at the behavior of my child, or am I angry that my agenda was interrupted? So, just recently I remember that I was trying to load the dishwasher and wash the dishes, and I had, June was at the table, and the only thing that occupies her without someone having to sit right next to her is the iPad.
Okay.
Which, of course, I'm not going to let her do all day long. So she was playing with the iPad, and all of a sudden she reached over. I had a vase of flowers in front of her, and I had forgotten about it.
Yeah.
And she reached over, she threw the flowers out, and then she took a drink from the vase and dumped the vase of water upside down on top of her iPad. And, it was moments like that where I just snapped. Like, I just got really angry and just, and it's just water. But it's that moment of, this is a 7-year-old and she should know what to do. And if she was typically developing, she would know how to behave at a table. But because I was so focused on being annoyed that I couldn't finish my dishes and have to clean up her mess, I just took my anger out on her and yelled and screamed. And so I think that's just an example of, something I have to recalibrate my mind all day long. Like, why are you angry? Are you, and it's always about me. It's always about, it's always about me. So, so just all day long, I'm having to kind of pray through every moment. If I am angry at my kids, like, okay, why am I angry and what am I going to do about this? And then I tend to just imagine, I'll take a moment and just imagine, okay, you have 2 choices here. And if you do this, then this is going to happen.
Right.
But if you do this, that you can deal with this the right way. So that is kind of the one thing that has helped get me through my days. It's just prayer in the little moments.
Is there a scripture verse that comes to mind often that kind of helps you?
My favorite passage is from Isaiah 58. The Lord will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land and strengthen your frame. And I've always loved that passage. And I recite that sometimes during the day. Just, the Lord will satisfy my needs in a sun-scorched land. And that really has nothing to do with the situation, but it just feels like, sometimes it's a sun-scorched land, and I just feel bone dry. And I don't, another thing is, my house is one of those houses that is, the front door is always open. Like, if it opens and somebody walks in, I don't even blink. And it's because, we have therapists who come 4 times a week. We have an attendant who comes daily. And I am always emotionally on. I always have to be super mom all the time. There's no downtime where I just get to be laying on the couch and watching TV and flipping the channels. I always am looked at as, okay, this is the model mother, and I'm, everyone's critiquing how I'm parenting, and I have a lot of emotions that I have to keep up with.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I have to talk to during the day. So I don't know where I was going with that.
That's really hard. I was actually, as I was reading your blog last night, I was thinking, I think the hardest times of parenting for me have been when I've had to be like super vigilant or something, like newborn days, potty training, or like when a kid is sick and you basically just can't leave him. But I know there's an end, you know. It's like like I can say, you know, these newborn days are going to be over in a couple months, or potty training it'll look different in about a month or so. But you don't get that. And so as I was reading your blog, that's just what I kept thinking, is like, you don't have light at the end of the tunnel, maybe. I mean, that might sound depressing, but you don't have, you can't say in, you know, a few years or in a couple of months, this is going to look really different. You don't have that. So how do you, what do you do, you know? How do you keep yourself from being bone dry? Yeah,
that is probably the hardest. That's one of the hardest things I have to deal with. And I would say that that's one of the hardest things when someone says to me, you know, I'll be like, oh, well, you know, this is going on, and I'll share, and then somebody might jump in and say, oh, I totally understand what you're going through. My daughter or my son is going through the same thing. And of course I want to just add, like, all snidely, like,
right.
Yeah, there's an end to what they're doing. And they're also 6 months and my daughter is 7. So it does feel like sometimes that there is no end. And I'm going to be honest, like, I could not do this without having a partner who was on the same page and who loved my daughter just as much. I could not do the sleepless nights and the times of her waking up in the middle of the night with her diaper off and poop all over her body. I just could not do it. And so honestly, I think that has been a blessing, that I have a husband who will join me and partner with me in that. And I'm going to be honest, like, the times where I may have thought that I was angry at my husband, or I didn't feel like I loved him anymore. I mean, that was the glue that held our marriage together. I just knew that I needed a partner in this journey of life, and I was not going to separate from that. And so I've been blessed with that. But I mean, again, just that whole idea of just recalibrating my mind all day long. You know, there's moments where I just have to say and repeat things like, I am being Jesus to this person right now, and I can't look at it any other way. I don't know how I have it in me to, when my daughter has smeared poop into every crevice of her body, I don't even know where to begin. And I don't know how I have it in me I don't have it in me.
Right.
And that's when I kind of have to just keep giving every single second up to the Lord as I'm walking through the cleaning up process. And, you know, sometimes I can do that, and sometimes I cannot. I can't do it, and I obviously can't do it. Who can do it, you know?
Sometimes there's more reserve in you, though, maybe, to be able to...
Well, right, and there's grace for that moment in time, that God just... I mean, sometimes I don't even ask for it. I just know that He just gives it to me. He just gives it to me somehow in that moment. So,
what does a typical day look like for you, specifically when it comes to caring for June? And I know you said you have caregivers coming in and out. So what would a typical day schedule kind of look like for you?
Well, when I do have caregivers, it definitely is a lot easier, but in some ways, and in some ways it's a lot harder. Just because of the emotional thing. Like, sometimes I don't even want to hire a caregiver because I'm like, I just don't feel like being on all day. Like, I just need a day of respite from being on emotionally. But it's not like we can just lay around and watch TV, because June doesn't do that. So it's either way. I'm either going to be real physical with June and probably hurt my back because I'm lifting her a lot, or I'm going to be, on emotionally. So I have to decide, and I usually go with on emotionally. But anyway, so a typical day, Monday through Friday is actually pretty great. I have a lot of support with my caregivers. I have a couple of really good caregivers right now. And so it just depends on in the middle of the night if something has happened. June doesn't sleep well. She is medicated, but even though she's medicated at night, she sometimes will wake up in the middle of the night and strip completely naked. And it doesn't matter. Like, we have special pajamas that zip in the back, but she's so skinny that she can wiggle out of them. So if that happens, sometimes June will end up in our bed because we've had to clean up a mess or just make sure that she doesn't take it off again, that kind of thing. And then quickly we get her ready. Her morning time is really structured. She gets up, she goes to the bathroom, we change her diaper, we get her dressed. She eats a bowl of cereal with almond milk every morning. And she can do that pretty independently. I mean, it's a mess, so we just clean her up. Then we get her harness on and brush her teeth, comb her hair, and wait for the bus. And then she gets picked up by the bus. Hopefully it's on time. Sometimes it's late. And she goes to school. And then when she comes home, there's an attendant there waiting for her. And her routine as of late is usually that she wants to... get in the pool. So we have just a little kiddie pool. We don't have a real pool, which we really could use. And then she also has ABA therapy that she does. It just depends on the day of the week, and the therapist comes to our house, and that's just a lot of like repetitive stuff and bathrooming procedures. Right now she's on an hour bathrooming schedule.
And you said that's called AB therapy?
ABA, Applied Behavioral Analysis. And that's been really helpful with her, just instituting routine. She learned how to use a picture exchange system. So even though June is completely nonverbal, she can give us a picture of what she would like, and we can either say yes or no. So the problem with that is she generally has about 5 pictures that she loves to give us, and we have to say yes or no. One of them is wagon ride. We spend a lot of time giving her a wagon ride. One is the pool, one is the iPad, one is Honey Nut Cheerios.
That's cute.
And so she also has a communication device that she's learning how to use. And so, then after she does her therapy, we, she takes a tub, and then she has dinner, and then we usually go on another walk, and then she goes to bed. And the hard part is around 4 or 5 o'clock, she can get, for some reason, her whole entire system just starts melting down. And she becomes extremely, her ligaments and her arms and legs are just flopping all over the place. So she often will spend tons of time on the floor just thrashing about, and we just don't know what's wrong, whether she has a stomach issue. So usually dinner is a very stressful time where she'll spend a lot of time just throwing her body around. And those few moments where we do have a dinner where she's calm, those few days, a month that happens, I have it in my head. I don't know about you as a mom, but I always imagine us sitting around and reading a Bible story together or something at dinner, doing a family devotion. In those, when that happens, that's when we take advantage of it and spend a little more time talking as a family or reading a Bible story or discussing something. So that's pretty much how a typical day goes. The weekends are obviously a little different because she doesn't go to school. So it's more of the same things that she does after school: wagon ride, pool, sensory play, all of that on the weekends. And following her around and making sure she's safe and not eating. She has pica, so she eats everything she eats things that are non-edible as well as edible. So that's probably the biggest concern with her, is that she is going to eat something.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
So last month she swallowed a ball. That was huge.
Yeah.
So we ended up in the emergency room, and they're not worried about the ball. They're just worried about the toxicity levels. It's that kind of thing. And really, it was just me turning my back for like 2 seconds, and she swallowed the ball. And I was like, really? You swallowed that ball? Are you kidding me? Like, where's the ball? It's got to be here somewhere. So, that's probably one of the biggest concerns. And just, she's getting so large, like so tall, that it's hard, especially at night when she goes through the jerking motions of her body thrashing around to dress her and just to even change her diaper. Oftentimes I'll change her standing up just because her feet are grounded and she's not going to be kicking me. I have pinch marks all over my arm because she will pinch and pull my hair because she's so excited. It's not necessarily malicious. Sometimes she gets angry and she will pinch for anger. And in those instances, she will go to a timeout chair. But see, the thing with June is, she loves timeout. She loves to be alone.
That's funny.
She wishes she could be left alone. So she's been an interesting study on discipline, and I'm so thankful that she wasn't my first child, because with my first child, I was pretty harsh. And just, you obeyed right away, and this is your consequence if you don't. And with her, I think it just would have been a
struggle.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember when she was about a year old, I didn't know the complexity of her issues at this point, and she just had no comprehension for discipline. And I remember I was like, she kept putting her little fingers up into the oven, where the drawer is?
Yes.
Well, I didn't know this, but you can reach underneath the drawer where that little tiny opening is. And she kept putting her fingers up into that opening and burning her fingertips really badly. And there was no guard. They don't sell a guard for that. No one thinks about that. And so I remember just saying, she has got to learn to fear fire. And I set up a candle. And every time she went to it, I would smack her hand. And I remember like the 15th time of me smacking her hand was so beet red. She still hadn't cried yet. And she just kept going for the candle. She was willing to burn herself over getting a smacked hand because the sensation was so sensational for her. And that is the theme of her life. Like, she's willing to get the consequence if she can still have the sensation, the amazing sensation. So we've had to be very creative with the way we discipline her.
That's interesting. Is that common with
so June,
special needs?
Yeah, well, June has something, she's low sensory. So so kids who have a low sensory system, it takes a lot for them to feel themselves in space. So for her, for her type of for that type of child, you could, for instance, put them in a swing and turn them around and around and around and let it go, and they would be able to get off the swing and walk in a straight line.
Oh, wow.
Because they just need so much input to feel themselves in space. As compared to a high sensory child who they feel too much. So this is the child who, if you bump into them, they jerk back and say that you've punched them. So it's the opposite problem, which actually my son struggled with at a young age. So interesting.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
What do you do when you feel stressed, angry, tired, which I'm sure happens at the end of every day? Like, what is your kind of almost like, how do you debrief yourself for the day? How do you wind down?
Well, I have a couple things that I make myself do every day. And this wasn't always me. I have an addictive personality, and also have a personality that I'll do something well for 6 months and then I'll slack off on it. So I've realized that I'm not ever going to be the gym mom who gets up and goes to the gym. I can't do that for a number of reasons. First of all, I have to prioritize, my family right now. And that means like making sure my house is in order during the week, so I have my weekends free. And also I value friendships, and I know some people do their friend thing at the gym, but for me, I just knew that I couldn't spend chunks of my morning at the gym, and I've tried that in the past, and it works for about 6 months, and then I have to really refocus. And so I do exercise. I do Pilates every single day, and I only do it for 10 to 15 minutes, but that's about 2 hours a week. And it's just this time I turn on music and I just do those exercises, and I, usually pray and stuff while I'm doing them. And I am not kidding you. I have to get it in before dinner hits, because I'm too exhausted by the time I'm putting my kids to bed. Yeah. So sometimes I have to say to the attendants, I got to go do my Pilates. Like, I go up to my bedroom and I shut the door. Sometimes it's 5:30, dinner's cooking, and I'm like, I have to get my Pilates in. And so I just have made that a priority. And that just helps. It helps for a number of different reasons. And then, I also, I really try to have some sort of scripture pouring into my life every day. And I would love to say that I'm the type of person who sits down every single day and does like a devotional. Yeah. I would love to say that too. I'm not there. I'm currently doing that right now, but I know I will fall out of it. Yeah. So one thing that I have done is I make sure that I just have scripture that I'm reading all the time, because I don't have time to read lengthy devotionals, but I know that I need to hear God's word. Mm-hmm. So I have bought DVDs, scripture DVDs, where it's just straight scripture, and I play them in the car all the time. So I'm driving, listening to scripture. And then I also if I can just even read a couple verses a day and just meditate on those all day long, having this running dialogue with the Lord. Yeah. It's all day long. Like, I think I used to separate prayer. Okay, I'm going to sit down and pray. But instead, it's like I just wake up in the morning, I'm talking to God, and I'm talking to him all day long. I'm telling him everything. I'm asking him things. I mean, and I know he's listening. Sometimes, I've gone through long stretches where I've been angry at him, and it's just me being angry. Or I've been, not hearing anything. Or I've been rebellious. And I think I've learned in the last few years for my prayer life to be just an all-day occurrence. So that's sort of the thing that I do.
That's so good. I mean, there's a verse saying pray without ceasing, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of the idea. You're just constantly dialoguing with the Lord.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it gets easier as you do it year after year, Yeah. Just telling him everything. So
I think that's so good. Mm-hmm. What is a way that someone can support you and your family, a friend? Like, what is the best support that someone could give you?
That's a really good question. And, I've thought about so many different ways I could answer that. But I will tell you the best support. And it has really been revealed to me in the last year, because I think I would have answered this question differently last year. Like, I think last year I would have said, for you to say, hey, can I take June to the beach for the day? And then call me and actually make a time and a place. Like, don't put that in my court. Right. Like, actually pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm going to the beach. Can I take June there? And that still would be nice. Like, that is an amazing gift for me. To know that June is going somewhere that she will love, and that I don't have to worry about her for that 2 hours. But I think in the last year, it's become evident that if my friends can get on board with the way my lifestyle is, and that they can include my attendance, June's attendance, the people who work with her, as part of our family, that is probably the greatest gift that someone could give for me. So an example would be if, for instance, I go with my friend to the botanical gardens and we're walking around. Now, June has an attendant with us. Mm-hmm. It's awkward. She's the third wheel. it's more awkward if my friend acts like the attendant isn't even there.
Right.
And they're just talking to me. I have one friend who just does this really well. And she just includes my attendant in conversation. She has gotten to know her, that, this person is a person. These people become a part of my family, and when you act like they're not, it puts stress on me, it puts stress on our relationship. And so that is one of the best gifts that anybody could ever give me. So I would say one of those two things.
Yeah.
The best thing that someone ever said to me, and she knows this, I've told her this, she said to me, I don't know how you do what you do. I think if it were my child, I would have to institutionalize her. And then as soon as she said it, she gasped and put her hand to her mouth and said, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have said that. And I said, that is like the best thing anyone has ever said to me, because it made me realize that she understood how deep of a problem this was and how hard this was, instead of just ignoring it. I mean, I have some friends who I don't think they even know my kids' names, and they don't include them in conversation. Well, they might know their names, but I think, and they don't ask me questions about June, and I don't mean questions like, how is June doing, but specific questions like, just what would be helpful for you right now, or, or just jumping to it or whatever.
There's like an elephant in the room. They don't want to talk about it kind of thing.
And so just including June's life in the conversation is just, it's just so, it makes me feel very encouraged to know that people care and people want to ask about her. Including June and a birthday party. I mean, she's 7, and she doesn't get invited to birthday parties for her 7-year-old peers. Nobody invites her. I mean, of course, I've probably made the mistake of not inviting them to hers either. But, I think I've probably backed away slowly because it's just so hard to even have a birthday party for her. So
can I ask, is that something that she would enjoy? Like, because you said she likes to be alone. Does she enjoy going to the beach with, a friend?
There are some things that she loves. Like, she loves the pool.
Okay.
She can actually swim. She learned to swim this summer. So if somebody was having a pool party, that would be totally up her alley.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, I had to fly to Connecticut for something by myself that was very important, and one of my friends invited my husband and the 3 kids over just to hang out in their pool and have dinner, and it was one of the best gifts I think we've ever received, because June loves the pool, and it is so therapeutic for her.
Yeah.
So if we have friends that have a pool, just to have their house open like that is just such a gift.
Okay, so like if I'm at Target with my children and they see your daughter and notice that she's different, what is an appropriate way to handle that situation? I don't want my kids pointing and asking questions, but inevitably that happens.
Yeah.
And so what is like a good, can you give me words to say to a mom like you? I don't want to hush my kids. I don't want to say don't say that, because June is different and that's okay.
Right.
And we can talk about it, but how can I have that, awkward conversation with a stranger at Target? Can you give me some words?
I think there's a couple different situations here. You're going to have the Target situation, and you're going to have the playground situation.
Okay.
So they're very different. So the Target situation, you are most likely not going to be interacting with the mother, but you are going to be putting language into your child's ears.
Right, okay.
That he or she will learn for their life and how to deal with kids with special needs. And so in the Target situation, I wish I even knew, like, the most perfect way to answer that. And
But how would you, like how
yeah,
would
for
you,
my
what
own
would it be for you?
kids, like, even my own kids, like, I think anybody, first of all, we don't point at anybody. I mean, you don't you don't point at a fat person, you don't point at a skinny person. So we have just, I've had to say to my own kids, like, okay, put your finger down, you don't point, but feel free to talk to me about whatever questions you have. So if they'll say, like, why is that person in a wheelchair? I mean, the best reason is to be honest. And the honest answer is there was an environmental cause for why they're in the wheelchair, or God made them that way. And so you can just discuss very briefly, depending on how old they are and how complex you want to get, depending on how old they are. The different ways that God would have created their situation. They may have been born blind. He or she may have been created that way, or there may have been some sort of environmental cause of why they were blind. So you can just talk about those different ways, and then you're going to get the question, well, why would God create someone who's blind? And you can just show them in scripture that God created someone blind because he wants to show his glory through their story. And so there's that piece. But if you are in a situation where you're going to be interacting with someone for a long time, like on a playground, and we get this a lot at the playground,
Okay.
where some child will walk up and say to June, hi, what's your name? Or, say to me, why is she acting funny, or why doesn't she talk? And usually the mother will get all embarrassed and say, I'm so sorry. And I'll be like, no, I love that this person's asking questions. And so I will usually just introduce June and say, this is June, and June doesn't talk yet. What is your name? And I'll kind of try to engage them all in a conversation. And then if it goes a little farther, I'll explain that June has autism. I want to be very simple. I don't want to go into all of her diagnoses.
Right. We're still waiting on a chromosomal diagnosis. And
yeah, so I kind of just make it real brief. And then they'll go, what's autism? And I'll explain, well, it's a disorder that sometimes you don't learn to talk right away. And so it's really hard to have interactions on the playground. And then I'll give an example of, like, things that the child can do that June likes. So I'll say, June loves it when you spin her around on that red thing over there. Can you do that? She loves it. Or June loves to be in the swing. Will you push her? And just give the child ways that he or she can interact with June, and tools. And I think I'm speaking for the special needs community in general. I think when you first start out, things may be offensive. Anytime somebody asks, like, what's wrong with your child?
Right.
But you learn to kind of just roll with it and get everyone on board and act like, let's talk about this. Let's not just sweep it under the rug, because it's kind of obvious. So those are some things.
What about the mom? What can a mom say to you? Like, if that had happened, situation happened with my child, and then they ran off to play, and then I'm sitting on the bench next to you, and all we hear are crickets. What can I say to you as a stranger?
Personally, I love it when people ask more specifically about diagnosis. Okay. Because it's obvious that she has a diagnosis, and I've already kind of said it to the child. So, and there have been those moments on the playground where someone will be like, oh, what is her diagnosis? And that is totally appropriate when it's already been labeled. And so I'd love that question. And I know it's, it just depends on your personality, how deep you want to go.
Yeah.
So another question might be, where does June go to school? And that kind of gives you a clue in for what type of special needs you're dealing with. That's an easy thing if you want to walk, tread lightly. because usually the mom may at that point say, oh, well, June goes to Crossroads School and she's in a self-contained classroom. So that opens the door for more talk about special needs.
Okay.
So those are some good questions to ask that may open the door.
That's good.
For that.
That's good. I think what people fear is like making you feel offended, like you said.
Yeah.
And it's also, I mean, it is kind of awkward. Like you don't want to,
Yeah.
you know, you don't want to
say the wrong
thing to a stranger, you know, like that's, you know, because then there's no time to kind of undo what you said. So no, that's so good. That's really helpful.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is, honestly, the sweetest thing that an adult can do is just model the behavior of stooping down on eye level with the child and saying, hi, my name is so-and-so. What's your name? And even though June can't talk, the mother or father will jump in and say, you know, this is June and she can't talk yet. And I always say she can't talk yet because I know that June is listening to everything I'm saying. And I don't want her to be the girl who grows up with this thing over her head, I can't talk, I can't talk. And I keep saying, you know, what I hope for her. She can't talk yet. And, you know, hopefully that is, I don't also want to say things like, she's a little slow. I've had kids say that to me too, like, oh, is she a little slow? And I'll be like, no, she's growing in God's perfect timing for her. You know, there's phrases that I have to keep reminding myself that she's hearing this lingo all day long of what we're saying about her. And she's hearing whether we're building her up or tearing her down. And so I have to phrase everything positively because I want her to believe the best about herself. I don't know what she understands. Yeah. And I don't know what she will understand. But I know that she can hear everything we're saying. And I would say that just in general for typically developing children.
I agree. I was going to say,
don't, like, state everything positively. Like, you know, the whole thing about, you know, my child is shy. If they keep hearing that, are they going to jump on board with that? And I'm not saying shy is bad at all. But I think, you know, any kind of thing that you can phrase in a positive way is good.
Yeah, I was just thinking, my son is pretty sensitive, and we realized he was pretty young when we realized that he knew when we were telling a story to each other, like a funny story, like, oh, you know, what he did today, that was funny. And, you know, I would just be telling my husband, but then we would kind of look over and he would look embarrassed. And he was, I mean, maybe he was 2. He was very young. And we realized, like, he's hearing and understanding, and we need to not do this anymore. Yeah.
They can, from a very young age, just sense the tension, sense if you're arguing.
Or making fun of them, which, you know, we weren't making fun of him, but we were just laughing, like, oh, you know, funny thing he said.
Yeah.
But
That's good.
So what are your strategies for protecting your marriage and for protecting your relationship with your other children when you have a child that, can I say, is high maintenance?
Yeah, she's high maintenance.
Yeah, so what do you do to protect your marriage and to protect your relationship with your other kids? Not from June, but, you know, just...
I know what you mean.
Okay, to preserve those relationships.
Because June is high maintenance, it's made my other kids high maintenance. If
Okay.
you know what I mean.
Okay.
So, because the focus is always June.
Right.
So the door opens. June has somebody who wants to see her every day, sometimes 2 or 3 people a day. That has promoted, you know, jealousy from my 4-year-old who still acts like a baby because she, you know, she's constantly vying for my attention and my husband's attention. And I've also neglected to raise her in the way that I wished I could have necessarily because I've been so focused on June. And same with my first, he has really risen to the occasion and really has taken June under her arm. But I have to be careful because he's so independent. You know, I could go all day and not even see him. Right. He's so independent.
Yeah.
He's learned as an almost 9-year-old, how to run his life. Like, he could just run the whole house. And he literally wakes up in the morning and is reading a book or outside and then goes to school, and I pick him up. He comes home and he's playing with his friends outside or scooting around the neighborhood. And it could be dinner and I don't even see him.
Yeah.
So I think that with my 2 other kids, I have to be extremely intentional again with just spending one-on-one time with them. And even this year, you know, I was debating between sending Charlotte full day to school or half day, and I chose half day just so that I could spend the afternoon with her. So that, you know, when dinner came, I would have spent a chunk of time with her without June there. And I mean, that's the same for my marriage too. I think we have a standing day that we go out, and it's every Sunday night. We have a babysitter come. And it's just the date that we have set for the week. And it's just sort of what we've been doing for a while. And it's already set up. So that's one thing. And I mean, we have to work at things. And we have to be on the same page about discipline with our kids, and we're not. we have to really like sit down and talk about all that. I am no expert on giving advice about how to preserve a marriage. I feel very I just have no idea about that. We go to counseling. We have been to a lot of counseling. Part of that has been to ward off just, you know, my husband was divorced, and so from the get-go we went to counseling,
right?
And we're not afraid to go to counseling. So, you know, that and I would say just being able to discuss things after they've happened instead of while they're happening. And that's probably just advice for any marriage, you know, just like you get in this huge fight. And I'm not good at following this advice, by the way. But, you know, I think that our most successful times have been when we've gotten in a fight and then we can talk about it later, even-toned. That is probably the thing that is our saving grace. So, yeah.
And like you said, good for all of us. Married people. So as you continue to walk in this journey that the Lord has for you, what would you say is your heart lesson that he keeps speaking to you to keep you moving forward and encouraging you, and just to let you know that he's with you, you're not alone?
I think the biggest thing is just to embrace the life that I've been given with thankfulness. You know, even in the hardest moments, if I thank God for those moments, even though they're hard, and make a choice to step into the moment and deal with it with a thankful heart, I feel like when you're in the midst of Thanksgiving, even if you don't mean it, like even if you're just saying it because you know that you're supposed to at that moment, I feel like there's a little work that begins inside of you that God just starts transforming your heart at that moment. And so I think just every moment is a valuable gift from the Lord that you have with your child. And so just taking it moment by moment and being thankful for those moments is really important. You know, sometimes like when I'm at my worst time with my, you know, even just with all my kids, and I've just stopped and just kind of prayed and just thanked God for that moment. It's just in that moment that even though I may have been really like not in a good state, like I may have yelled, I may have screamed, I may have said something that I regretted, I feel like the Lord has given me the ability to apologize. And I think that's the other thing, just being able to be repentant quickly of your heart and your ways. And even with your children, being honest with your children.
Yeah.
So I've had to say I'm sorry so many times.
We had a little guest join us, Charlotte. No, that's so good. And I love what you said about just saying thankful words, even if you don't like quote unquote feel them.
Yeah.
Doing something in your heart too, because then it's sort of, you're acknowledging your place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're kind of taking yourself off of your own pedestal and just saying like, oh, I need to think about this differently, and you just do it. And I've been there a time or two myself. And
I think
so good.
Yeah, when I'm in my worst place where I just feel entitled and wish life were different, and I'm grumpy and just upset, I just, the thing that kind of takes me back is I always think of, what if I was in a third world country where I was dealing with disability? And, the fact is we just because we live here in the United States, we are so blessed.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a car to drive. Mm-hmm. And if I start going back to the basics of what God has blessed me with, then my heart just feels better.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I go if things get really bad, where I just start going down that trail.
Yeah. No, that's so good. Katie, thank you so much for chatting with me this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I wish we had, way more time, but...
No, it's been really good.
Thank you so much, and I'm really excited for people to just hear your story, and thank you. I wish I had so much more time to talk with Katie. I actually had lots of other questions for her, but actually our time ran out and I had to go pick up my son, so life. But I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I took away so many things, and maybe primarily was just convicted about what she said about altering your expectations of how your children should behave, and that a lot of times we get angry when it's because they've interrupted our own agendas. And I am guilty of that. Oh my word, I'm raising my hand high. I'm sure I'm not alone. But that was just really convicting, and something I've been, really trying to think about is changing my expectation and changing, my gut reaction, I guess, and trying to think about it more before I explode, or whatever the case may be. Also, I don't know if you kept hearing what I kept hearing about when Katie was talking about what her friends can do for her. And I feel like the word that kept coming to my mind was just the importance of being validated, the importance of a friend validating how difficult parts of her life might be, or validating, June's special needs, validating the fact that they have caregivers who are around and who are people with feelings as well. It actually just reminded me of my conversation I had with my friend Lauren in episode, I believe, 15, which was called For Such a Time as This. And I just know when I was going through my losses, it just felt so good when somebody would validate what I was going through and say, that is really tough, and what you're going through is hard, and I don't know how you're doing it. And just something about that, something about acknowledging that part of you that's trying so hard to be brave just speaks volumes. And it's just something that really practical that we can do to be a good friend to anyone going through something difficult. I also liked what she said about, interacting with a special needs family out in public that you don't know, or that you meet at the park or at Target or what have you. And the fact that she said, as an adult, you can get down on the child's level and say, my name is Sarah, what's your name? And I feel like that communicates so much. Like, you get down on the child's level and you share your name on a first name basis. It's just so personable. And if there's one way to communicate love and God's grace to somebody, it's by saying, like, I see you as a person, and I'm, we're on the same level. And so I hope that if I'm ever in a situation like that, I'd be brave enough to do that. And of course, Katie's heart lesson about, being thankful in all things. and about, just speaking thankful words even when you're not feeling them. I mean, that's just, I can't even tell you how many times I've been there. And it's transforming. And I believe when you do that, you are humbling yourself before the Lord, and He's going to bless that. Well, before I wrap this whole thing up, I just wanted to say, actually, I just thought about this the other day, that just because you're listening to my podcast doesn't mean you necessarily read my blog. And so I am not sure if there are some of you exclusive podcast listeners who don't know that I'm actually currently expecting. I am 34 weeks pregnant with a healthy baby boy, praise God. And so I have about 6 weeks left. He's due, not December. Please not December. Don't add another month. November 21st. So Thanksgiving week. I'm expecting another little baby. And so if you, I actually have interviews lined up. And so podcasts should be coming pretty regularly through maybe the first week of November. But then after that, I am not exactly sure what I'm going to do. So if you see maybe a little bit more sporadic posting or something like that, I'm still here. I'm probably just trying to figure out what my new normal looks like after, adding, technically, I guess, a third baby to our family. The third one that's coming home with us anyway. So I just wanted to put that out there. I just realized that, I think I've been writing a lot about it on my blog and maybe sharing on Instagram, but I don't know if I've ever actually said it just on the podcast. So if you only listen to the podcast, I just wanted to keep you up to date and let you know that I'm not disappearing off the face of the planet permanently. I'm just trying to figure life out over the next couple months. So just bear with me and check back, and I will do my very best to do my best. But that's all I got. So anyway, thank you all again for listening and for supporting the podcast and for leaving feedback and just letting me know how much you are enjoying it and being uplifted by these wonderful women's stories. And I am right there with you, just feeling like what an awesome opportunity I'm having to learn from these women who have so much to share. So that's all from me. I hope you all have a wonderful week. And as always, I hope you were able to come away with a heart lesson of your own to help you draw closer to the Lord. Bye, guys.